It was a Friday night at Mira, the hottest rooftop lounge in the city, velvet ropes, designer shoes, and a guest list longer than the building's lease. The line stretched halfway down the block, humming with laughter and impatience. Security guards, all black shirts and crossed arms, stood firm at the door, scanning IDs and attitudes. Malik stood near the back of the line, hands in his coat pockets, hoodie pulled up against the chill. He wore no jewelry, no designer logos, just jeans, a black hoodie, and quiet patience. A couple ahead of him whispered, glanced back, then laughed. The kind of laugh people share when they think someone's out of place. One of the bouncers, tall, bulky, white, nodded at the next group in line, ignoring Malik completely. 10 more minutes passed, then 15. When Malik finally stepped forward, the bouncer held up a hand without even looking. List only. Try somewhere else. I'm on the list, Malik said, his voice calm. The bouncer looked up, then did a double take. You? What's the name? Malik Kamari. The bouncer snorted. Sure you are, man. You see what this place is? You think you're getting in dressed like that? Malik didn't move. He just looked past the man, toward the glass elevator at the edge of the entrance, already lit up and waiting. Then came the line that shifted everything. I'm not here to party, Malik said. I own the building. The bouncer blinked. The words landed like a slow echo, bouncing off the bouncer's certainty. He laughed short, forced, unsure. Yeah? And I'm the mayor. Malik didn't respond, just reached into his coat pocket, slowly, carefully, and pulled out his phone. Tap. A swipe. Then he held it up. On the screen, a security dashboard, live footage of the lounge's rooftop, the bar, and the line they were standing in. One tap away from full control. The bouncer leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Then the phone buzzed. Malik glanced at it, then turned the screen so the man could see. A message. Mr. Kamari, your elevator is ready. Should we alert the manager? The bouncer's face shifted. Eyes flicked up, a slight shuffle in his stance. His authority was slipping, and he felt it. Behind them, the line had gone quiet. Not completely, just enough to notice. The couple who had laughed earlier weren't laughing anymore. A woman whispered, Did he say he owns the building? Malik slipped the phone back into his pocket. His voice stayed even. You could have just asked for my name. Instead, you assumed. The bouncer straightened up like he was trying to regain height he'd already lost. I didn't mean, he started. You did. Malik cut in, not cruel, just final. The glass elevator behind them chimed softly. Its doors opened, and a suited concierge stepped out. Mr. Kamari, he said with a slight bow. We're ready for you. Malik stepped forward. Malik didn't rush. He moved past the bouncer with the same steady pace he'd had while waiting in line, hands still in his pockets, expression unchanged. The bouncer shifted, trying to step aside quickly, but not fast enough to hide the flinch. The concierge held the elevator door open. As Malik entered, he caught the faint buzz of whispers rising behind him. Not loud enough to be called chatter, just surprise looking for volume. Inside the elevator, glass walls framed the skyline. The concierge pressed the top floor button, then stepped back. Apologies for the wait, sir. Malik nodded once, still calm. Wasn't the first time. The elevator began its ascent. Outside, the bouncer stood frozen, arms now folded not with confidence, but discomfort. Someone leaned over the velvet rope to speak to him. He didn't answer. Back inside the elevator, Malik watched the city fall beneath him. Lights blurred. People shrank. He wasn't angry. He was used to this. That was the part they never saw. The years, the quiet, the looks, the corrections that never came with apologies. But he didn't carry it like bitterness. He carried it like memory. By the time the elevator doors slid open to the rooftop, Malik's expression hadn't changed. He stepped into the soft hum of music, the low clink of glasses, the expensive air of exclusivity. He wasn't here to drink. The rooftop buzzed with curated energy, dim lights, gold accents, and conversations designed to be overheard. Waitstaff moved like clockwork, trays balanced, smiles practiced. A DJ in the corner adjusted sliders with bored precision. No one noticed Malik at first. Not really. He didn't stand out, not in the way the lounge was used to. He wasn't loud, didn't flash anything. Just walked across the floor, each step measured, head slightly tilted, taking it all in. A hostess spotted him. She glanced at the concierge following a few steps behind, then back at Malik. Recognition flickered. Her posture shifted fast. Mr. Kamari, she said, stepping forward, we didn't expect you tonight. Didn't plan to be here, Malik replied, voice quiet but clear. She nodded, eyes wide. Would you like your usual table? No, Malik said. He glanced toward the edge of the lounge where the VIP section curved against the glass wall overlooking the city. I'll stand. Just wanted to see the view. The hostess didn't argue. She gestured toward a spot near the railing, subtly motioning to staff to make space. People started noticing. Little by little. The man in the hoodie. The way staff responded. Whispers picked up again. Behind the bar, the manager appeared, bald, sharp suit, expression tight. He was already walking over. Malik stayed where he was. He didn't come to talk. But they would. Mr. Kamari, the manager said as he reached him, voice low and overly pleasant. Had I known you were coming, you'd have greeted me at the door? Malik asked, without turning from the view. The manager hesitated. Of course. Like you did earlier when I was in line? A pause. I didn't realize it. Malik finally looked at him. Not angry. Just looking. You didn't ask. The manager shifted uncomfortably. We have procedures. Security, guest lists, I was on the list. I understand. I think there may have been a misunderstanding with. There wasn't. Silence again. Around them, the lounge had begun to quiet. It was subtle but real. Conversations dipped. People glanced over shoulders. Word traveled fast in places like this. Especially when someone stood still while others scrambled. Malik turned fully now, eyes steady. I've owned this building for 8 months. I've walked through that front door a dozen times. Not once in a suit. Not once without being told I didn't belong. The manager nodded slowly, swallowing words he didn't trust himself to say. I'm not asking for red carpet, Malik said. Just the same respect you'd give to the man in loafers behind me if he'd said the same name. The manager looked down, then up again, trying to find footing. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. It already did. Malik let that sit. And then he turned back to the view. The manager lingered a few seconds longer, unsure whether to stay or retreat. Malik didn't acknowledge him again. He took the hint and walked off, whispering urgently to a server on the way back to the bar. Across the rooftop, glances had turned into stares. People weren't looking at the skyline anymore. They were watching the man in the hoodie, the one who came in quietly, stood alone, and suddenly carried the weight of the whole room without saying much at all. A couple near the bar exchanged hushed words. One of them, a man in a tailored blazer, looked over and said, "Wait, that's the owner?" His friend replied, "He just walked right past security. Didn't even blink." The bouncer who'd turned Malik away hadn't moved from the entrance. Now he stood just inside, arms no longer folded, posture tighter. Every few seconds, his eyes darted toward the top of the lounge where Malik stood calm, unbothered, dangerous in the way that silence sometimes is. A server approached Malik with a drink on a tray. "Compliments of the house, sir?" Malik glanced at it. "I didn't order anything." She hesitated. The manager insisted. He looked at the drink, then at her. "Keep it," he said. She nodded and walked off, unsure whether she was being dismissed or spared. Near the bar, the manager paced, phone in hand. He wasn't calling anyone. Just holding it. Waiting. Trying to look busy. Trying not to look like he'd been humbled in public. Because he had. But Malik hadn't raised his voice. Hadn't asked for anything. That was what made it worse. The bouncer finally moved. Not fast. Not sure. He walked toward the back of the lounge, eyes locked on Malik. A few heads turned as he passed, whispers rising again like wind before a storm. Malik heard him coming. Didn't turn. The bouncer stopped a few feet away, hands at his sides. "Sir," he said, voice lower than before. "About earlier." Malik stayed facing the skyline. "You don't need to call me sir now," he said. "You didn't think I earned that 20 minutes ago." The bouncer looked down. Shifted his weight. I didn't know who you were." "I know. I was just doing my job." Malik turned then. Just enough to meet his eyes. "No," he said. "You were doing what you thought your job was. And what you thought it was depended on what you saw when you looked at me." The bouncer's mouth opened. Closed. He didn't know what to say to that. Malik didn't need him to. "I'm not here to make a scene," Malik said. "I'm not here to make you feel small. But I need you to think about this. What would have happened if I wasn't who I am?" The bouncer swallowed hard. Malik's voice stayed quiet. "You'd have turned me away. You already did. And tomorrow it'd happened to someone else." The bouncer looked away. "That's the part that matters," Malik finished. He didn't wait for a reply. He turned back to the skyline. The bouncer stood there for a second longer, then walked off. Not back to his post. Just away. No one clapped. No one said a word. But something had shifted. Malik stood alone at the edge of the rooftop, city lights stretching before him like quiet witnesses. Behind him, the lounge moved slower now. Music still played, drinks still poured, but conversations had thinned. People watched without watching. A woman near the corner leaned into her partner. "That was him, right? The one they turned away." Her partner nodded, not answering with words. Malik wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to make anyone feel bad. That's what made people uneasy. They expected outrage, expected a scene, expected someone to demand an apology on cue. Instead, they got a man who simply stood still, said only what needed to be said, and left the rest hanging in the air for them to deal with. The kind of silence that says, now it's your turn. A server passed Malik again, hesitant. If you need anything, food, another drink, just let us know. Malik gave her a small nod. Thanks. She smiled, almost relieved, and walked off. Near the bar, the manager was still trying to look like he had something to do. He wiped down an already clean counter. Fixed things that didn't need fixing. Because how do you fix something when the problem wasn't an action but a reflex? And now the room knew. Now they couldn't unsee it. In the far corner of the lounge, a young man stood up. Early 20s, clean-cut, nervous energy. He walked toward Malik, not fast, not confident, but with a kind of quiet urgency. People noticed. Malik glanced sideways as the man approached. Hey, the young man said, stopping a few feet away. Sorry to bother you. You're not. The young man hesitated. I saw what happened. Earlier. At the door. Malik waited. I've seen the kind of thing before. I never said anything. He rubbed his palms together. Didn't know if it was my place. Malik looked at him. Whose place do you think it is? He asked, not unkindly. I don't know, the man said. Not mine, maybe? He stopped himself. That's the thing, I guess. I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. Malik didn't scold. He didn't even blink hard. He just said, and tonight. The young man nodded slowly. I saw what you did. How you handled it. I won't forget that. Malik studied him for a beat. Then do something with it, he said. Next time, don't wait for someone like me to be the only one who notices. The man nodded again, more firmly this time. Thank you, he said. Malik offered a brief nod, then turned back toward the skyline. The conversation was over, but the weight of it stayed behind. The young man returned to his table, quieter now. But not the same. Near the back, a family was seated, unusual for the lounge, but not unheard of. A business dinner, maybe? A celebration. A man in his 40s, woman in her 30s, and a boy, no older than 12, sitting quietly between them. The boy had been watching Malik since the elevator ride. Not staring, just watching. The way kids do when they see something they don't understand but know is important. His father was mid-conversation, voice too loud, trying too hard. Talking deals. Talking growth. Throwing out buzzwords. The boy wasn't listening. He leaned toward his mom, whispered something. She glanced up, followed his eyes to Malik, then back at her son. She nodded barely. The boy slid off his seat, walked across the lounge, past the groups that had started to lose interest in their cocktails and gain interest in the quiet man by the glass. He stopped just behind Malik. Excuse me. Malik turned, eyebrows raised. The boy's hands were in his pockets, mirroring Malik's posture without meaning to. Are you really the owner? He asked. Malik looked down at him. Yeah, I am. The boy nodded slowly. You don't look like the other people my dad says are important. Malik didn't laugh. He just said, maybe your dad needs to see more important people. The boy looked around, then back up. I think I want to be like you. Malik didn't flinch, didn't puff up or smile wide. Just knelt down so they were eye level. Then remember what you saw tonight, he said. Not the part where I owned the building. The part before that. The boy nodded, serious now. Then he turned and walked back to his table. Malik stood up again. And this time, when he looked out at the skyline, he wasn't the only one seeing clearly. The lounge didn't return to normal. It tried. The DJ played a little louder. Glasses clinked again. Laughter returned, but it was thinner, stretched over something people weren't ready to admit they'd seen. Malik stayed a while longer. He didn't move to a private booth. Didn't take a seat. Just stood at the edge of it all, watching the city like he'd done this 100 times before. Because he had. Then, without fanfare, he turned. No announcement. No grand gesture. He walked back across the lounge the same way he came in, quiet, unnoticed until it was too late to pretend he hadn't been seen. Staff moved aside. Guests didn't. They parted not dramatically, just instinctively. Like they'd all realized something, this man didn't need a spotlight. The way he carried silence did more than noise ever could. Near the door, the manager stood again. This time he didn't try to speak. The bouncer was gone. Malik passed them both without a glance. He reached the elevator. The concierge was already waiting. Mr. Kamari, he said, holding the door. Appreciate it, Malik replied. The doors slid shut. And just like that he was gone. But the room stayed changed. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with its own rhythm, valets moving cars, front desk answering calls, the usual hum of a high-rise after hours. The elevator dinged softly as Malik stepped out. No one clapped. No one stared. Down here, he was just a man walking through his own building. He didn't head for the exit. Instead, he turned left toward a small side office tucked near the concierge desk. Unmarked. Quiet. His. Inside, the lights flicked on automatically. A minimalist space, clean lines, one desk, a wall of monitors, muted tones. No nameplate. No awards. Malik hung up his coat, sat at the desk, and pulled up the building's internal system. Security logs, timestamps, camera feeds. He wasn't checking for drama, he was checking for patterns. The door creaked. His assistant, Ava, leaned in. "I saw the footage," she said. He didn't look up. That was quick. She stepped in, closed the door behind her. "They're still talking about it upstairs." "I figured." A pause. "You want me to follow up with the manager?" she asked. "No. Not yet." He looked rattled. "He should." She hesitated. "You're not going to fire anyone?" Malik looked at her now. "No." "Why not?" "Because I'm not interested in revenge," he said. "I'm interested in what they do now that they've seen it." She nodded slowly. "You think they'll change?" "I think some will," he said. "Others won't. But now they don't have the excuse of not knowing." He looked back at the screen. Quiet. Ava left him there. Sometimes the loudest part of the story is what happens after no one's watching. The next morning, Malik's building buzzed earlier than usual. Emails pinged in waves. The manager from the lounge sent a carefully worded apology twice. The first one was impersonal, full of legal phrases. The second, sent an hour later, was shorter. Realer? Just 5 words. "I'm sorry. You deserve better." Malik didn't reply. Instead, he forwarded both emails to Ava with a short note. File under learning in progress. No action yet. At 9:02 a.m. a memo went out from Malik's office. Not to punish, not to call anyone out by name. Just a quiet statement distributed to every business in the building. Subject, standards of respect and inclusion. Every person who enters this building, tenant, guest, staff, deserves to be treated with respect. Not because of who they are, but because of who we are. Appearances are not qualifications. Assumptions are not policies. Let's not wait for someone to look the part before we show them basic decency. This message isn't a warning. It's a reminder. M.K. No logos, no title, just initials. Within minutes, people were forwarding it. Screenshots popped up on phones. Tenants shared it in internal chats. The cleaning crew passed it around quietly. The barista at the lobby cafe printed a copy and taped it near the register. Some rolled their eyes. Most didn't. And a few quietly read it twice. Because they recognized the tone. Not angry. Not proud. Just tired of watching the same scene play out. That evening, the bouncer stood in the staff locker room, alone. His shift had ended an hour earlier, but he hadn't left yet. He sat on the bench, phone in hand, reading the memo again. He'd seen the footage. Someone had sent him a clip, just the moment Malik turned and said, "What you thought your job was depended on what you saw when you looked at me." The words hadn't left him since. He'd played the moment over in his head on repeat, trying to explain it away, trying not to feel it. But he did. He thought about the kid who came up to Malik. He thought about the look on the manager's face when Malik walked out. He thought about how quiet the rooftop had gotten. And now this memo, simple, unblinking. Like someone holding up a mirror. He stared at it. Not out of guilt. That came earlier. This was reflection. The uncomfortable kind. He'd been doing this job for years. Knew the vibe of the crowd, who to let in, who to question. He called it instinct. But now, reading those words again, he saw it wasn't instinct. It was assumption. He closed the phone. Then opened the locker, pulled out a clean shirt, and changed without hurry. Not just out of his uniform, but maybe into something else. The kind of man who doesn't need to be told twice when the truth is standing right in front of him. 3 days later, Malik walked past the lounge again. Same building. Same evening rhythm. But this time, he wasn't stopping in. He glanced through the tall front windows. Music played. Lights glowed warm. The velvet rope stood in place, but the air around it felt different. At the door, the bouncer stood in a cleaner uniform, posture a little more open. He wasn't folding his arms. He was checking IDs, but also looking people in the eye. Not scanning. Seeing. When Malik passed, their eyes met. No words exchanged. The bouncer gave the smallest nod. Not a gesture of apology. Not groveling. Just recognition. Malik returned it just once and kept walking. Inside the lounge, the staff moved with a sharper kind of awareness. Guests still laughed, but a few of them paused longer before judging the next person in line. A couple stood near the bar, whispering about the guy from the other night. One of them said, "It just makes you think, doesn't it?" And it did. But Malik didn't hear any of that. He was already out of earshot, walking across the lobby with the same quiet stride. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. The moment had already left its mark, not in headlines, not in social media posts, but in people. And that was enough. Because the real story wasn't about who he was. It was about who they chose to become after he left.